Welcome to another workshop offered by the Office of Work, Life, and Benefits at the University of Kentucky. Today, we're going to be talking about emotional, physical, and financial self-care during the holiday season. And we have our speaker with us today, Dr. Nichole Huff. She is a professor and researcher over in the School of Human Environmental Sciences. And we are pleased to have her here with us. She's done several presentations for us over the years, and we're always excited when she comes back to share with us. So thank you, Nichole, for being with us.
Thank you, Izetta, for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. All right, so I find this session sometimes comical because I am in the middle of a very busy holiday season, and so anytime I do presentations or workshops on work-life management strategies, I'm always doing a little internal chuckle because I find myself needing the reminders and having to be very intentional about how to find balance so that I can be present during the holiday season in the ways that promote my wellness. And so we're going to be talking about a few different dimensions of wellness. And like Izetta said, I am Nichole Huff. I am an assistant professor in the School of Human Environmental Sciences, and I'm an extension specialist with FCS Extension here in Family Finance and Resource Management. And so, but I'm a trained family therapist, and I do a lot of applied research on resilience and promoting recovery, and just how to strengths-based practices. Because while finances are one of those resources that we manage, we also manage our time and our energy and our relationships and our mental health. And so there are different aspects to the things that we manage that are vital to our livelihood and our health. And so today, just kind of to give you an overview of the next 30, 45 minutes, we're going to explore three particular components of well-being: emotional, physical, and financial, and how they relate to the holiday season. And then we're going to discuss ways to prioritize wellness during what is often a busy time. Now, some may find it less busy, but regardless, the holidays are kind of mixed with eustress and de-stress, right? Some of the good stressors and some that may wear on us just a little bit. And then we'll kind of end our time together talking about how we can practice healthy self-care that helps us prioritize things that promote wellness during the holiday season. Okay, so in the text chat, just tell me, what are some of those things right now that are threatening your well-being during the holiday season? So what is vying for your time, your energy, your relationships, your mental health, your finances? So what is threatening your well-being right now? Finances, social anxiety. Yeah, that's a big one. Family. Family, again, can be a source of eustress or de-stress, right? Positive and negative stressors. And so, there are many things coming at us at once during the holiday season that can kind of threaten. Oh yes, we were talking about that just a few minutes ago, waiting to start the session. So social anxiety definitely, but also this feeling of needing to give and give and give, and it's always, right? And so am keeping a tally of how many times I've been asked to contribute to school gifts or this collection or this collection. And while it is good to be giving and in a giving spirit, sometimes what we have to give, whether it's our time, our energy, our relationships, our social, aptitude, or our finances, they get really stretched, and it's hard to give in all the different places that we are asked to give of this holiday season. All right, so we're going to look at three particular elements of wellness during today's session: emotional, physical, and financial. But they're part of a larger framework that examines wellness. And so this is taken from SAMHSA's model, the wellness initiative, their wellness initiative. So SAMHSA is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And many places, many different organizations adapt this comprehensive view of wellness. But it really recognizes that no one single factor contributes to our well-being, but it's this cyclical interplay of many different things that work together, right? And so, for example, if we're stressed about finances during the holiday season, that stress can manifest itself physically and emotionally, but it may interfere with our sleep. And if we don't sleep well, then that's going to interfere with our ability to work the next day. It may interfere with our emotions. It may, if we're with anxiety or depression or these manifestations of stress, it can also cause us to question our purpose and whatnot. And so wellness does incorporate, it's more than just the absence or disease of stress, but it involves having purpose in life, having active involvement in satisfying work and play. And so not just showing up, right? Like we can just show up. I can show up to work. I can show up at home, but it doesn't mean I'm active or satisfyingly engaging in the roles that I need to do. And wellness is enjoying what we need to do, our work and our play. It's having joyful relationships. And so, there's a difference in needing downtime and needing times of isolation and alone time than being isolated or lonely. And those are very different things. And we can feel lonely even in the middle of large crowds. And so, but having joyful relationships that quality versus quantity, but that add meaning to our lives. And then having a healthy body, a healthy living environment, and just those stepping stones to that idea of comprehensive wellness. And wellness will look differently for everybody. And it doesn't mean always all things are running smoothly, but the combination that we are implementing practices and habits that contribute to our ability to just show up in life, and then not just survive, but also thrive. So the first one we'll look at is emotional well-being. And so the next few slides are coming from Boston University, and I think they have a really robust, and you'll get a copy of the slides, just a student wellness initiative there that covers these 8 dimensions of wellness. And so these information is coming from that source and how they have presented the 8 dimensions of wellness. But emotional well-being is about recognizing, experiencing, and managing a wide range of thoughts and feelings in a constructive way. And so self-awareness is the key in emotional well-being. And so it is knowing your limits, knowing when to press pause, and then knowing when to seek support from a friend, from a loved one, from a professional. But it is about having self-awareness. And so, and then communicating that. Because when we have emotional well-being, it helps us, and when we can stay in tune with our emotional well-being, it helps us manage stress. It helps us maintain balance in mental health. And then most importantly, it promotes our resiliency. So when things come crashing down, we're able to rebound just a little bit quicker. And this can be really hard and challenging during the holiday season because we may be, asked constantly to do this, to do this, to do this. And so, this is a busy time as a professor. It's end of the year, so I have to submit my performance review packet, but I have to finish grades and finalize grades, but I'm meeting grant responsibilities and extension responsibilities, but I'm also contributing to class parties and feeling the need to go to family gatherings or to buy things. And then that was mentioned to contribute to attend class field trips. And it can become a lot. But knowing when you need to say, no, I can't go to this, or when you need to press pause. And it's important when we talk about wellness, and you'll see this come up a couple of times, but understanding when to seek support. And so There's still, when we're fighting it hard, the stigma around needing support for our well-being. So emotional, mental, physical well-being, and sometimes all of those aspects can be neglected. But to know when to go talk to a physician about possibly medication to help with anxiety or insomnia or depression, or reaching out to a friend or a loved one when you're having a hard time, or reaching out to a supervisor if you are stretched to the limits, or to a colleague, but knowing when to seek support. And we'll talk about ways to do that. All right, and the second is a physical. And again, these are interconnected aspects of well-being. So physical well-being is about caring for, respecting, and advocating for your body. And so where self-awareness was the key to emotional well-being, creating habits and routine are the key to physical well-being. And this is really hard because, again, if I have had to work late on a project, I can't shut my mind off in time to go to bed. And then that interferes with my sleep, which interferes with my productivity the next day. And it becomes very cyclical. And if I'm on little sleep, then I might be hangrier the next day, or I maybe my emotions may take a toll. And so they definitely connect to one another. But what habits, and this is reflective, and we'll talk some more about this, but what habits do you have regarding sleep, exercise, nutrition, and then making safe decisions about substance use? And so, if you have a glass of wine, we'll just use that as a safe example, after dinner, are you making responsible and safe decisions about that, so that you are exercising decisions and discretions that don't detract from your physical well-being? But there's also an element of awareness and self-awareness that is connected to this. So it's understanding what your body needs, both when you are sick, but also to prevent illness and injury. And so, like, if you've heard that phrase, like, if you don't take the time to pause, your body's gonna pause for you. And that's when you may physically wear down, if you push yourself too hard, if you don't take those breaks that you need. And so, taking care of yourself when you're sick is one thing, but creating those habits that promote wellness so that you prevent injury and illness is also important. And so, like, if you don't sleep very well, but then you have to drive and function the next day, it can impair your reaction speed, time in a vehicle. It can make you clumsier walking or climbing stairs. But it is very connected. And then that third aspect of financial well-being that we'll discuss is, or well-being, is financial well-being. And so this is also one of those things that are stretched really thin during the holiday season. So financial well-being is learning how to manage your money and resources responsibly with an eye toward long-term financial security. And so it is spending in a way that aligns with your values. And so are you spending your money on the things that matter most to that overall picture of well-being? And then, are you educating yourself on the best practices for earning, saving, and investing? So are you being a good steward of the money that you earn, and that you are saving for that long-term financial security, and investing in a way that will allow you to have it over the course of your lifespan? And so financial well-being or financial wellness, it's not about being rich, and we use that in air quotes, or about, getting rich quickly, but it's about having security and freedom of choice. And those are two important aspects. And so, it's there's not a certain financial amount in today's economy. What we need to be financially sound is hard. It's hard, and then in times like the holidays, it can be stretched even more. But this is also a source that I like when I talk about financial well-being. It's from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but it breaks down this idea of security and freedom of choice in the present and the future. And so it is having control over your day-to-day and month-to-month finances, but then also the capacity to absorb a financial shock. And so if your car were to break down, or if you were to lose your job unexpectedly, or to get sick, or to have a child needs something, or a parent needs something, could you absorb a financial shock? Do you have the wherewithal in your budget or your savings to do that? But then also having freedom of choice, right? Because, wellness, going back to that definition of comprehensive wellness, is joy. Joy is a big constant across the different domains of wellness. And so financial well-being should also allow us to just make some decisions that help us enjoy our life, but that we're also on track to meet those financial goals. And so I always say, I love my job, but I do want to retire someday, right? And so if I'm not making the decisions now and the investments now that will allow me to do that, I'm not setting myself up for success financially down the road. And with the holiday season, even though it comes around the same time every year, what we know is that most families don't save for it, and so it's all put on a credit card, and then you're faced with debt, and you're starting out the new year paying off a credit card balance that can end up costing more if that's not paid off right away, but that it is an expected expense, but that is treated like a financial shock or an unexpected expense. And so how can we look at things and create different habits and practices so that those elements of our comprehensive well-being are not threatened during the holiday season? Okay, so we talked about some things that may be impacting your financial, mental, or emotional well-being right now that's threatening your well-being. But what is it about the holidays that can be challenging altogether? And so, yeah, we've talked about family, social anxiety, but what just makes the holiday season harder? If you have anything different, chime in the chat. Because in speaking of joy, the holidays are not joyful for many people. Yeah, missing family members. And so these can be family members who are no longer with us, or just if you live away from family members and it draws attention to their absence in your life. Yeah, loss of family members during the holidays, especially, depending on if it's a new loss, that's a different kind of grief. If it's not a new loss, that's a different kind of grief. And then our minds have this also the stress of what is supposed to be this joyful time, but as we are simultaneously dealing with some stressful events, it can create that internal tension that wears on our emotions, that in turn impacts us physiologically. And so these are some of those things that that we're juggling and that are threatened. So those relationships, the grief that you may be juggling, the financial strain, buying gifts for everyone, right? And so even whether you go in person to a store, that is stressful. Ordering online is stressful. Mail can be delayed. Packages can be lost. And then if you are the gatekeeper of the gift buying in your home, keeping up with physical, emotional, financial, the energy drain, the relationships, the balancing that, oh yeah, this is good, and the expectations of a perfect holiday. And so there's a lot of expectations on us, right? That's society that imposes. If you're a caregiver in any capacity and you feel the weight of making a holiday magical for someone else, that is added pressure that is adds to the inability to juggle for sure. And so ways to stress less during the holiday season, is tempering those expectations, setting realistic expectations of celebrations, travel, of gifts. It is saying, never going into debt for something or someone if you can't afford it. And so it's taking that realistic snapshot and, not worrying, keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak, in terms of what Santa Claus gifts might look like, however you celebrate, but being realistic about what you can afford in terms of your budget, but also in terms of your capacity, mentally, physically. There are only so many hours in a day, only so many days in a week, only so many weekends in December. What can you realistically do so that you are self-aware of those boundaries when you need to say no to something, even if it could be misconstrued as, not being friendly? It's okay to set boundaries, and how other people interpret those, have conversations, but you can't be responsible for someone else's interpretations. But you can say, hey, this is all I have to give, in terms physically, time, financially, whatnot. Simplifying the season, with the introduction of social media, and with it amplifies the need to, yes, have that perfect holiday, to buy and buy and buy. We are in a consumer driven society, even though we have, prices are at high points. There is still this pressure to consume. But what are some ways you can simplify this season? And, like, I love this. I'll do this with my kids sometimes, this idea of coupon books. Like, rather than exchanging sibling gifts, when last time I checked, my kids were not using their money. I have three, to buy their siblings gifts, but they want to exchange gifts. And so I have had them in the past create coupon books for one another. And so things like, I'll take out the trash for you, I'll play a video game with you for 20 minutes, I'll, whatever. And then it encourages them to value experiences and appreciate experiences, but then also it reduces my financial burden during the holiday season. But I also will have communications with family, because I feel that that this is something that sometimes we don't always talk about, because we don't want to bring up gifts. Like, if you go to a gift exchange, or and you know to go and to buy gift cards for my nieces and nephews, for my sister or brother-in-law to buy gift cards for my kids, and all we're doing is swapping gift cards. Why are we doing that? What are ways that we can enjoy our time together that don't involve expensive gifts just for the sake of giving? And then when I brought up that conversation, it was met with thank goodness. But you don't, we're timid sometimes to talk about changing traditions, and instead of embracing traditions. And so we have started, rather than buying gifts for the sake of buying gifts, for, when there's not a need, but we still want to enjoy the holiday season, doing like Secret Santa, drawing names, or putting a gift cap, or buying, white elephant gifts, and playing games. Last year, have any of you heard of the game Left, Right, Center? Have y'all heard of that? This was new. It's a dice game, but it was just a few dollars. And we did this last year and we had so much fun on one side of the family that we did it with the other side of the family too. And rather than exchanging gifts, we played games, and then, we could win prizes. Some had like little gifts you could choose if you won, and if you didn't, one had a little money pot going where it cost you $1, and just very low stakes things, but it valued our time, it valued our experiences. Like, what are some low and no cost ways that you can enjoy the holiday season? Because probably, if you think back to your childhood or your favorite holidays, you're not remembering a particular gift, maybe one if it was something you really wanted, but you're probably remembering the loved ones that you spent time with. It's about the relationships, it's about the experience. And so maybe, it doesn't have to be expensive vacations. It could be around town. Can you do something together? Can you explore state parks, or what are low and no cost ways that you can spend time together? The coupon book is great for older adults as well. And so this is good for children when thinking of what to give a grandparent or, a neighbor, but maybe, mowing a lawn or raking leaves, or shoveling snow as we're entering into wintertime, or spending time, coming over and offering to do, around the house things once a month, but that your time is a commodity. And so giving away your time is also can be a gift, and being okay to embrace that, to create new traditions, and then to communicate about the need to scale back. And I use this with the this craft. I think crafts are also good for any age and any group. I think that it can be good activities during the holiday season. But this idea of this Grinch quote, right, from the Grinch, that maybe Christmas he thought doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps means a little bit more. So I'm big on no and low cost activities, because at the end of the day, it is that quality time that is going to really matter. And the same, like using what you have in terms of decorations. If you're hosting a potluck, maybe create a potluck rather than feeling the financial burden to do everything yourself. But how can you delegate the contributions from everyone? Because when we think about managing our well-being and our health, I think this idea of balance is a myth. And if you've attended anything I've presented on work-life balance, this is something. Balance does not look like weighted scales. Balance looks like over time things balance out. Like I am in a very busy season, and as many of you are, is probably why you're on this. And so right now, my work-life balance is those scales are very weighted, right? But I know that if I can just make it another week or two, I'm going to be able to tip those scales and really focus on my family and what matters to me during the holiday season. And so my day to day may not look balanced, but when I take a step back, is, like, does my general approach to life look balanced? Because it's more about work-life management, and like for the holiday seasons and wellness, it's like, what can I do to manage my stress? Because we're never going to eliminate it. And so what can we do to work in things to promote our resiliency, to keep our budget balanced, to keep ourselves healthy mentally, and physically and emotionally. And so it won't always look balanced, but what management strategies can we do that will help us prioritize wellness? And so this is something that, if you with productivity, the Eisenhower matrix is used a lot in productivity, but it can also be just how to prioritize your task right now. And so it is a prioritization tool that you can use. And so with the Eisenhower matrix, it is just, if you have a whole lot to do, is figuring out what quadrant does it come in. Is it urgent and important? And so this matrix looks at task along a continuum of what is important and what is urgent, and where does this fall, because everything is not important and everything is not urgent. Now, I have had a grant proposal due this week. That from my work, it was urgent and important. I had a deadline. It was firm. It required my attention. It required me to press pause on some things. And so I needed to prioritize doing that first so I could meet that deadline. It means I had to decide to do some other things later. So, so the do first category are both urgent and important. So they're your crisis, your problems, your deadlines. These are things that aren't as movable in your schedule. And then the due later, they're important, but they're not urgent. So it's something that the deadline might be next week, or it's something. My favorite thing, as I'm sure yours is that sounds like a January problem to me. Is what is important, but realistically, it's not going to happen. And I'm getting better about asking, especially at work, colleagues, what is your timeline for this? If it's before the holidays, and I had to say this at a meeting this morning, it's before the holidays, I cannot do it. If it's in January, I'd love to be a part of it. But realizing what can we do later? And is this a today problem? Is this a holiday problem? And then what are some other things that are urgent, but maybe not important? And so these are things that need to be done, but maybe they don't have to be done by you. And so are there things you can delegate? And so if you're a caregiver and you have help, can you delegate the task? And so, my husband and I, we try to do best to show up, but either way, we're outnumbered. We have 3 kids, so we can't show up for everybody all the time. And it's communicating that I can't attend 2 field trips next week. Two field trips. We can't attend 2 field trips in 1 week, but it's having the conversation that you are important, but we have a job and we have to show up for the job. So we can't always do both. And having those communications so that our kids can manage their expectations. And everybody's household is different. You may not have anybody to tap into, and your village may not look like my village. But what does your work situation look like? Are there tasks that you need to do that you can pull in a colleague on, that you can ask for help with, that you can work with your team, that you can outsource? Like I am a financial management specialist, and so I don't like to pay for delivery services, but I have to prioritize. Like I needed something and I did not have the time in my schedule to go to a store yesterday, but I needed something for my household immediately. And so I decided it was worth my time to outsource that task, and it was worth every cent because I needed the time to focus on work. And so everybody's matrix will look different, but it's recognizing your limits. It's having that self-awareness. And then the holiday season too, it's what can you eliminate? Like this year, realistically, like we didn't put out every holiday decoration that we had. We're saying no to some things that are just because there are other things that are more important. And so it means we can't go to every social event. We can't go to every field trip. We can't contribute to everything. But these are things that you can eliminate, and giving yourself permission to eliminate those things. And so if you find yourself not knowing how to juggle all of your responsibilities, the Eisenhower matrix, excuse me, is one way that you can do that, to just stop. And what it does is, using a tool like this or a brain dump, and I'll share another strategy here in a moment, it allows us to get out of our fight or flight response, like where we begin to access our higher order reasoning. And when we just stop and push pause and begin to think through, okay, what is really important? It allows our brain, it signals to it that this is not an emergency. It allows our brains to access higher cognitive functioning. Whereas, like, that's what our upstairs brain does, and then our downstairs brain is responsible for keeping us alive, keeping us safe. And if we act like everything is an emergency, then our bodies don't know how to tell the difference between what is and what isn't. And so just stopping and using a tool like this can signal that, hey, I can work through this. There's a solution. And prioritizing self-care can also help us during the holidays. There are many ways to do this. And, you know, if and there's science that backs it again, that doing some of these activities initiates processes in our brains and our bodies that allow us to regroup, refocus, recenter ourselves. And so practicing gratitude, there's a lot of science behind when we audibly or take the time to say aloud or to write down what we're thankful for, that it can be entirely calming, that it can help us reframe in our minds when things aren't going right. Even if, it's truly the breath in your lungs is all you got to be thankful for. Well, that's a good place to start. But it is trying to, and if you struggle with insomnia, doing this before bed has been shown to help with sleep disturbances. Engaging your mind. And so during the holidays, like if you're not a reader, this is one of my biggest suggestions and something I have started to try to do to get me off of technology at night, but reading a physical book that I choose to read for me. Not TV, not a screen, not a device, not doom scrolling social media, but getting into reading for fun because of the physiological benefits of reading. And so there is a huge amount of science behind reading that includes lowering blood pressure, reducing heart rate, relieving muscle tension. It improves sleep quality. So just 6 minutes a day, studies show that it can significantly reduce your stress levels, lower your heart rate, and decrease your muscle tension because of it. It engages your brain in such a way that it can't focus on some of the negativity in your life, some of the things causing anxiety. I don't know if you wear for Mother's Day. So I've had it for several months now. I got an Aura ring for Mother's Day. But if you have a smartwatch or anything that monitors your physiological symptoms or response rates, I want to challenge you to read and then go back and read something that brings you, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, but something that brings you joy, that you can, detach from reality for just a little bit. And then go back and look at your physiological response. It is amazing to see that the times that I've been reading for fun, not for work, but for fun, and then I go back and I'm looking at my daily physiological feedback. My ring is marking my heart rate in the restored category, the same, if not lower, as if I were to have taken a nap. It is phenomenal science that I have personally seen by implementing this strategy, not just a research study that I have read about. So if that's not for you, try it, or if that's a hobby that you once had, but what is something that can engage your mind? Because when we engage our mind, it can help detract us from some of the things that are causing us stress. Same thing, centering yourself. So it's having that self-awareness to understand, okay, my social anxiety is getting high. It's time to leave this event. I need to go outside and get some fresh air. If you are out doing your holiday shopping and it is too crowded, knowing, okay, I need to leave, or keeping AirPods or something where you can put them in to listen to music. Music is also a great way to engage your mind and to reduce your physiological response to stress. Embracing your emotions. That means that it's okay to not be okay, to recognize if you need to cry, if things are hard for you. Again, having that self-awareness to say, this is really hard, and then having those communications. Being body conscious. And so this is one that is really important this time of year, but it's listening to your body. And so it's nothing to do with, wearing your stretchy pants to eat a lot at your holiday dinner. It's not that kind of body conscious, but it's recognizing when you're running on fumes. It's listening when you need to pull back. It is giving yourself the capacity and the space to say no to things, to know when you need a nap, know when you need a snack, when you need a coffee, when you need a hug, but listening to your body. And then again, socializing, but going back to that, socializing in ways that bring you joy, um, and not in ways that challenge your mental health. Some of the routines that it can be important to keep and prioritize, is, your personal and professional routines, but not letting the holidays fully get you out of those routines. Still prioritizing going to sleep at the same time, waking up at the same time, and then what are those um, routines you can do to stack habits. So, if you've read Atomic Habits or any kind of habit formation, but how can you stack habits? And then what is so important about routines when it comes to brain science is our bodies really like to know what to expect. And when life feels so chaotic that our bodies and our brains don't know what's coming next, it creates more anxiety. So routine and habit formation can be a strong way to buffer some of that unknown stress. And so if your body begins to, like, if you're on a circadian rhythm and your body knows what time it is for bed, and if your bedtime routine has to do with showering or washing your face or brushing your teeth and reading a couple chapters of a book or writing in a gratitude journal or reading with a child or whatever, even if it's watching a show, but if you begin to do those same things, your body will relax as it responds to the routine you've created. But doing that around sleeping and meals and exercising, and if you are a gym, junkie, by all means, but just getting outside, exercise can be very loose, right? Climbing stairs, going for a walk, walking the dog 15 minutes. A colleague who, they don't really have a walkable neighborhood. So she says she'll often talk to her mom, who just walks laps around her driveway. But as a way to just get outside and to decompress, that can be a good way to just take off the day too, to shift between work and home. But what are some of those routines that you have or that you could create that would promote wellness in your life? All right, and so I'll kind of end with a couple more strategies for how to prioritize. So the Eisenhower matrix is one, but also this is really simple. It is, just imagine you have two balls. You're juggling two balls. One is rubber and one is glass. All right, and so if you were to drop the glass ball, it would break, right? And so it would be hard to clean. It's hard to clean up broken glass if you've ever tried, and it's almost impossible to put back together. But the rubber ball, if you were to drop it, it would bounce. And so if I can't figure out what quadrant a task goes into, I just simply ask myself, all right, is this a rubber or a glass ball? If I drop this, is it going to be hard to put back together? My grant deadline, for example, if I miss it, the funder doesn't care. They're just going to give that award to somebody else. They're not even going to entertain the work I put into the proposal. All right, that is a glass ball, needs my priority. If it will be a little harder to recoup should I drop it. A rubber ball, again, might be one of those January tasks. This is great, but we can tackle this in the new year. The same thing if I'm looking at home, like, laundry is often a rubber ball until we've reached the end of it, and then we might need to prioritize it. But I look at those things. Are there moments in my kids' lives or a loved one's lives, if you're a caregiver, that is, if I miss it, it might be a glass ball. It might be a little harder. If somebody's sick, that's a glass ball. If there's an emergency, for sure. But if it's a rubber ball, again, if it's 2 field trips in 1 week and we got to prioritize one of them, I'm okay to recognize that they're going to bounce back. It will be fine. But is learning to priority juggle, because if we don't we can't juggle but so many balls or they're going to all come crashing down. And so how can we juggle the ones that are most breakable, and then set the other ones aside until we can handle picking them back up. And then finally, like, we we don't want to melt down, right? And if we don't temper our wellness and our expectations and our priorities, we're going to melt down. So if you find yourself sinking in to-dos, there are some strategies that you can do, again, to raise our awareness, like the Eisenhower matrix, to help us stop and introduce rational thought when we're flooded with emotions or we're flooded with fear or flooded with anxiety. First thing is just to calm yourself. These are all C's, but the 6 C's when you're sinking, to calm yourself. So like going for that walk, getting that coffee, taking a breather, getting some fresh air. But if you find yourself overwhelmed, the first thing to do is just put yourself in a calming situation. Take a minute, take a breather, call somebody. But what do you do? Put on a song, go for a jog. What do you do that calms yourself? Then create a list of those things that you've got to do. Do a brain dump, because, again, there's science behind that. If we take everything that's in our mind and we dump it down on paper, that it helps to it helps us to clean that slate of that chaos that we're trying to juggle in our mind. So create a list. You can do this on technology. You can write it down physically. But begin to look at what is I can only do so much. What can I do today? What needs to be done today? What is urgent and important? Where can I focus my time today? That may be a family responsibility. It may be a job responsibility. But what are your main concerns? And then begin to look at your overall calendar. Like, I'm starting to plan mine out weeks, if not longer, in advance, knowing that, all right, here's the spot I can work on this. Here's a spot I can do this. I'll, flex this time here, this time there. Because what that does is it tells my brain, you don't have to panic. You'll get it done. And those things that you might have to eliminate some things. And what can you move. But I start to put things on my calendar. And then you start on that most critical item. What can you just, whether it's connecting with that loved one, going to that party, if it's doing something for work, but whether it's home or work, but what is that most critical item that needs your attention at that moment? But then the last one is really to communicate with your family, to communicate with your team, to communicate with your boss. But if you are sinking, to communicate with the professional, is to let people know, that there's a lot on your plate. You're doing the best that you can, that you may be late on a deadline, or you may not be able to do this field trip. It doesn't mean that you don't care, but that there's only so much you have to give. And so those can be some helpful strategies. The crochet at night to wind down. Yes, crocheting. If that is on my bucket list of things to learn how to do. So I'm jealous that you know how. But because of that is one of those old school crafts that are thought to have kept anxiety levels down when it was a more practiced art. And so crocheting, needlepoint, anything that requires your hands and your mind to be engaged in something, but that is a great way. I don't know how yet, but I want to. So what are some other things, just kind of, we're about to time, but what can you do? And you can put this in the chat. What can you do, or what do you have planned to do to establish a healthy balance in the new year? And so not necessarily a resolution, but just examining your routines, your habits, your priorities. What do you hope to do in the new year to help you keep and maintain a healthy balance? Maybe I can look at how to crochet. I'm just thankful that I've worked reading back into my schedule, because that was something that I used to enjoy that I just stopped doing. Anybody have any goals for the new year about healthy balance? Scattered social, yeah. Oh yeah, Headspace. That is one that can be accessible through UK as well. Yeah, using meditations, yoga, that is good for your mind and your body. Cutting screen time. Screen time, I was reading something earlier this week about how screen time prohibits our minds from forming full memories. And so it does feel like time is moving faster than it did before technology because we're not our minds are not coding our memories the same way, and so screen time is really detrimental. And so that is one I am trying to prioritize as well, and it's very hard to do. Right. And so there can be some relaxing apps can help us relax, but it can detract from from our sleep cycles and whatnot. All right. And so do you have, are there any questions or comments um, as we round out our time together? Happy to entertain questions or comments. And I appreciate your time. And it is a busy time in the work day and in the season. And so I appreciate you joining or watching the recording later.